So, you may have heard about this story. There were these three ministers who were on a plane, and one was a Lutheran minister, another was a Methodist minister, and another was a Unity minister. Unfortunately, the plane crashed, and somehow they found themselves in hell. They were really surprised about it, and so they were really trying to figure it out, why they were in hell, and it was so hot. And the Methodist minister's well, my why, okay. Well, if only maybe I didn't have so many vices. I would drink and do drugs. Maybe that's what it is. If only I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't be here. It wouldn't be this hot. And the Methodist minister is why am I here? Oh, well, if only I wouldn't have cheated and lied so much, I wouldn't be here, and it wouldn't be so hot. And they look over at the Unity minister, who's just kind of standing there, rocking back and forth. They're does she know why she's here? It's no, she doesn't. She actually hasn't been thinking about it. All she's been doing is affirming, I'm not here, and it's not hot. I'm not here, and it's not hot. By the way, this joke went better than the first one that I did at the 9:30. I know when to pivot. But really, how many of us can see ourselves in that, denying the reality of what is going on by using our affirmations, right? And doing it in a way that doesn't really allow us to at least face what it is that we are in the midst of. Because I believe that affirmations are very powerful and they support us, and just like any spiritual tool can be used for healing or can be used for avoidance. Have you noticed that sometimes in our spiritual journey, we realize that, wait a minute, when I went into meditation, I was really just trying to stop myself from having those feelings, from being aware of what was going on, or maybe even escape from what was taking place. And there's nothing wrong in using spiritual principles and practices to ground us, to lift us up, to invite us into a new way of being and experiencing spiritual journey. And is it for our highest good? Is it here to support us? And, I know that many of us come to Unity for many different reasons and found ourselves in Unity for many different reasons. And I get the pleasure of hearing from so many of you what those reasons are. We're this positive path for spiritual living. We need some positivity in our lives with everything that is going on, that we want a community that we can lean on, that we want to be reminded of our connection with the divine, our own experience as expressions of the divine. A couple of weeks ago, I heard somebody shared with me that their Sunday experience with us is their escape from their day-to-day life. And I get it. And I sit with, it's words. So how are we each defining those words? And I know that it is challenging. I know that there are difficulties. I know that there are things that aren't feeling good, not only in our individual lives, but in the life of the community and humanity. And just get a sense of needing to escape from life and using Unity as that sort of escapism. For me, I would really, if you need that, you need that. And I would really love that when we come to Unity, it's not necessarily about escaping our lives, but actually being reminded of the tools and the practices that we take back into our lives to be able to live and experience them in a way that not only feels good or feels positive, but in a way that really reminds us that regardless of what is going on, God is with us. That regardless of what is taking place, God simply is. And as we come together and we look at these practices and these tools, I know that part of what we're trying to do is really just become more enlightened, right? Be able to experience life from a different, higher level of consciousness. And sometimes in our journey into that, I believe, because I've done it myself, we don't recognize the things that are standing in our way. in our way of really stepping into these principles and really stepping into life as we know life can be. And a lot of times, we're not even aware that we just don't want to see those things that are standing in our way. Amen? We try to pretend that those things aren't happening with us or in us. We try to pretend that we ourselves haven't taken on a definition of ourselves based on other people's opinions about how we should be or could be. And we get into this relationship, I'll call it, where we are really trying to be that positive path for spiritual living, but negating actually what life is really about and negating what our experience of life is in that. How many of you have thought to yourself, maybe recently or maybe in the past, this sucks. I hate this. It's going to hell in a handbasket. Yes? And how many of you, after saying this, like, oh no, I shouldn't hate. Oh no, this doesn't suck. This is for my highest good. Or like, it's not going to hell. No. There's a blessing in this. There's a blessing in this. And I agree that that is a tool that we can use. But if we keep going back to this sucks, I hate this, it's going to hell in a handbasket, maybe it's not an affirmation that we need. Maybe there's something deeper that we can get from the experience and really question what is going on so that we may be released from it instead of glossing over it with another affirmation that we don't believe and we just think it sounds nice, or instead of glossing over it with 3 minutes in the silence because we think that once we come out of the silence, life will be completely different. Maybe there is something in what is coming up. If we really get to the root of it, that which feels uncomfortable, that which feels difficult, that which we have deemed negative, that if we get to the root of it, it's part of the healing process. And part of the healing process that really allows for it to be grabbed by the root so that it doesn't come up again, so that it can be completely healed from our experience. And so part of the healing process for me is that we have to understand where we are at. This is simply where I am at. All my feelings, all my emotions, the way that I'm responding to life, this is simply where I'm at. And with compassion, I can allow myself to not only be honest about the way that I'm feeling, but in a very honest and authentic way, see what is the deeper meaning. See the gift that could be in that. I believe that it is time that we really take off our masks, and I've been talking about this quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. And it's not the mask that we put on sometimes for somebody else, but how many of us have put on a mask so that when we look in the mirror, we see something that feels better, or that seems more positive, right? Or seems more unity, right, than what is truly taking place. And I believe that the healing process is about acknowledging where we're at and being able to invite the healing essence of God, truth, to uplift us and heal. And it's a journey. And sometimes I think that I, and maybe you, forget that it is a journey, that it is a path, that it is something that continues to evolve. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think we should get stuck in our stories, but can we at least admit that we are living into some of our stories? Can we admit the stories that we have and not pretend that, no, that was just somebody else? No. For some of you that have been in Unity, we used to do this a lot, like cancel, right? Like, so can we be more honest about it? And I believe that the more honest we are, the greater the opportunity is for us. Because, God, it takes so much energy and it takes so much effort to always pretend to be positive, to always pretend to be happy, and to try to use all these principles and all these practices in a way that actually, instead of being a mechanism for healing, which they can be, is a mechanism for avoidance. There was a spiritual teacher, Debbie Ford, who would talk about really getting in touch with our shadow side. For those of you who are not familiar, the shadow side of us is that which we are ashamed of, that which we don't want other people to see, but in reality, it's because we don't want to see it. We don't want to acknowledge it. And one of the things that I loved that she would speak about is that it's called the beach ball effect. Some of you may have heard this, where when you're trying to just gloss over a hurt, when you're trying to gloss over a pain, a difficulty, a resentment, when you're trying to just, forgive to forgive's sake rather than really doing the work of forgiveness, what you're really doing is just trying to push down the shadow part of us. It's like the beach ball in a pool, and you're trying to push it down and push it down. And you can only imagine the amount of energy that it takes to keep that ball from popping up. And unfortunately, or fortunately maybe, actually, so that I don't judge it, we start having more and more of these beach balls that we're trying to maneuver and have a handle and control and keep from coming up so that nobody sees them, that we don't see them. And at some point, we just get really tired. And at some point, it just pops up. And it pops up in a way that feels even more violent. It pops in a way that feels even more unhealthy than if we were kind to ourselves by being completely comfortable with being uncomfortable. Being comfortable with, okay, so there's a pain coming up, there's a hurt coming up, there's an anger coming up. I'm not going to pretend that it's not there. I'm not going to push it to the side. I'm going to own it in the sense of why, being curious about it. Our prayer for protection is a wonderful spiritual tool for me. And our prayer for protection, for those of you who are new, it's the prayer that we speak at the end of each service. It gets spoken all over the globe at hundreds of Unity ministries every Sunday. And it's a really interesting thing because I also believe that it has a possibility of being a bypass because it ends with, and all is well. For those of you who are familiar with it, and you'll be familiar with it, and all is well. And by the way, the originator of the prayer for protection, James Dillard Freeman, he actually did not write all is well. It ended with God is, period. Nobody knows and nobody can tell me who in Unity decided to add all is well. I haven't been able to figure it out. And I get it. There's a space of comfort that we get when we affirm all is well. And all is well in the ultimate realm. And here, is it all well? Is it all well with us at home? Is it all well with the community? When you're seeing some of the things that are going on, some of the divisiveness, some of the issues that especially in Florida that we are facing, is it all well? And when we speak those words, are we doing it so that we can believe that God is, and in ultimate truth there is all is well? Or are we just saying it because it's what we say, and it's just rote? Or are we saying it with ambivalency and without the desire to do the work so that it's not only words that we speak, but it is words that we live by? And it is not only words, but faith that is expressed through it. And so all of these principles and practices that can be used as avoidance, there's a term for it. It's called spiritual bypass. The psychotherapist Robert Masters says the spiritual bypassing is the use of spiritual practices and beliefs to avoid dealing with our painful feelings, unresolved wounds, and developmental needs. And so the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Yeah, you're good. I have to tell you that a couple of years ago, a group of Unity members went to the Homestead Detention Center. And it was right at around the time that in immigration, they were doing the family separation. And so a group of us went there so that we can bring our energy, bring our consciousness, share our love. And as we were walking right in front of the building where we believe the children that have been separated from their families were housed in, something in us, so we just started speaking the prayer for protection. And the light of God surrounds you. The love of God enfolds you. The power of God protects you. The presence of God watches over you. Wherever you are, God is. And I couldn't do the all is well. Was it well? It didn't feel well in that moment. It didn't feel well that there were children in there that had been separated from their families. It didn't feel well that I felt that I had to be there to show up to say that family should not be treated this way. And it just didn't feel. Now, especially as I think I was already one of the ministers here, there was this impulse in me that wanted to say all is well, but there was also something in me that realized that if I did, I really didn't believe it. And that what I was just trying to do was avoid all the feelings that it had brought up for me to be there to do what I was doing. And rather than avoid those feelings, I realized that I wanted to experience those feelings. I wanted to really allow those feelings to be with me. And so I believe that the all is well can be used, especially in unity circles, as a new, I'm fine, right? Like you know that, right? Like, how are you? I'm fine. How are you doing? I'm okay. When sometimes we don't feel okay. Sometimes we don't feel fine, but maybe we don't want to acknowledge it. Maybe we don't want to share that with other people. And so we gloss over what is truly taking on. It's all in divine order, by the way. That can be a wonderful affirmation. I believe it can also be a cop-out. I remember there was a coworker who would always turn in all of his work really late. And a couple of us would be like, come on, you got to be on time. And the response was, it's all in divine order. It's all in divine order. It's like, or you can get your work in on time, right? Like, but so in that moment, I wasn't able to say all is well. In that moment, I was feeling pain. I was feeling grief. I was feeling guilt even about what was taking place. And I didn't want to go to the place of spiritual bypass. Now, there are other ways in which spiritual bypassing can show up, especially in unity teachings, or in our use, I should say, of unity teachings. How many of you have heard or shared or spoken, well, no. It's unity over division. Like, we don't want to talk about race issues. We don't want to talk about politics. We don't want to talk about racial justice. We don't want to talk about this or that because it's just going to divide us. And we are unity, and we have to be in unity. Well, that's a form of spiritual bypass, to not be comfortable with the things that will make us uncomfortable in certain relationships. But we can have those conversations, even from the place of, this will bring about a greater sense of unity by having these conversations. How about, this idea of oneness? And so, well, God sees no color, so I don't see any color. That was going around quite a bit. Maybe not here so much at Unity on the Bay, but in other spiritual communities. Well, I don't see color, so I don't need to deal with all of the racism that is taking place in Florida and all the racism that is taking place in the lives of so many people that are being hurt and are suffering as a result of it, because I see as God sees. We are one. And then there's also the transcendence. And maybe you know somebody like that if you haven't been one yourself. It's like, well, somebody's telling you all the things that they're going through, all the issues, or you're watching a lot of things on TV, and all of a sudden you're like, no, I can't focus on those things. I got to focus on love and light, love and light, love and light, love and light. And that's where my focus is. Sure, and there's a place for that. And are you doing it to avoid the realities that are going on in this world, in this life? I believe that before we truly experience ultimate reality, we have to face the reality of our experiences and not shy away from them and question why they're there so that we can heal from it. Robert Augustus Master says, what spiritual bypassing would have us rise above is precisely what we need to enter, and enter deeply, with as little self-numbing as possible. To this end, it is crucial that we see through whatever practices we have, spiritual or otherwise, that tranquilize rather than illuminate and awaken us. See, I believe that our spiritual principles is about imagining and envisioning a world that works for all, But it's not just a tagline, and it's not just an affirmation. It is something that can drive us to act in a way that will bring that vision into reality. And in order for us to do that, I believe that there's healing to be done. And there's healing to be done within us, and there's healing that is coming up to be healed. And that's one of the things that I really recognize is those pains, those points of pain, those points of hurt, if we are willing to sit with them as our meditation beautifully invited us into, that's where the healing begins to take place. Not by pretending that there's nothing to be healed, but by really getting into it and allowing the healing to come up. I believe that our lives are so much richer when we get to explore the constructs that we have within our lives, whether those are fears or hurts, that we don't have to stay in them, but we simply have to recognize that they are trying to share with us a deeper truth. Now, a couple of days ago, and I believe that it's partly because I knew I was going to talk about spiritual bypassing, I was on my way to work, and I was driving over, and I just got a really deep sense of grief and sadness. I was in my car, just a few minutes away from the office, and I thought, I need to just not cry. I need to get over this. I need to put on a different face because I'm heading into the office, right? I need to be more positive. I need to. When then I realized, no, what I really need is to allow myself to feel this and to be curious about what was coming. And so I cried, and it was based on the fact that I had been reading the article, and some of you heard the story, of a teacher in Florida who had gotten permission from parents at the beginning of the year to show PG movies. And she showed a Disney cartoon PG movie, and it just so happened that there was a cartoon character at the beginning of the movie that said one line that identified them as gay. And because of that one line and showing that kids, even though it was a PG movie, now the Department of Education is investigating it. She's not teaching right now, and they're actually interrogating and questioning all those 10-year-olds that were watching that movie. And I just sat with that, and I know that it can feel painful because I felt the pain of it, right? And I knew that there was something there, and so just as I allowed myself to feel it, I was curious about where it was coming from. And what it really came up for me was that I was feeling a sense of betrayal. Because there are individuals that feel like 10-year-olds shouldn't know that a family like mine exists. And I was feeling a deep betrayal from some of the people that I know believe this way that are in my life. But then when I got deeper into it, and I've been thinking through this and experiencing through this, really the person that I felt most betrayed by was me. For not speaking up, for not honoring who I am, for being scared. Right? I was thinking, well, my son's school would show that movie. And then I thought, well, wait, would they? Should I ask? What if they say no? And all of a sudden I realized it was me. I was betraying myself, and there was healing that could happen. As I moved through that, it also came to me that there was something else that wanted to be expressed through that experience. Because as I sat with it, instead of shoving it to the side, right, because it was uncomfortable, it came to me, wow, actually, progress has been made. Because, yeah, this is happening now, but when I was 10 years old, this wouldn't have happened because there was no Disney movie with a gay character to actually show at a school. And so it brought me to the place of not only understanding why I was really hurt by the situation, but it also brought me to a place of more peace and more hope and more faith. And it reminds me, because the prayer for protection was actually inspired by Psalm 23, verse 4. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. See, what that tells me is that God is also in the darkest valley. That our comfort isn't in denying the valley, but being able to move through the valley in faith and with faith. Jack Kornfield says, true spirituality requires us to be fully present for life, to look deeply at the sorrow that exists now in our world, and to look at our individual and collective relationship to it, to bear witness to it, to acknowledge it instead of running away. And I have to tell you, we are a positive path for spiritual living. So there was even uncomfortability in bringing these subjects up. But I knew that it's part of my healing, and I believe that it's part of our healing. And so how do you re-engage in the world when so much of us wants to avoid that which doesn't feel good? Well, we can cultivate an open-minded attitude to have curiosity. So when the pain and the hurt shows up, what does it really mean? What is it trying to tell me? What is the healing that is being asked for in this moment? We can also examine the light and the shadow side of who we are. What are some of the things that we've tried to lie to ourselves about and put to the side that is seeking not only to be acknowledged, but is seeking to be brought in, healed, for us to be made one? And then the other one, which I know can be difficult, is to just face and feel our pain. Face and feel our pain. It doesn't feel comfortable, but it's part of the process. It's part of the journey, and it's part of the gift that we get to experience what needs to be healed. See, there is no right or wrong feelings, just the opportunities for insight, the opportunity for acceptance, for realization, for transformation, and for growth. I shared with you that the prayer for protection ended with God is. How beautiful is that? God is. In our sadness, God is. In our pain, God is. In our joys, God is. In our connectedness, God is. In our feelings of being divided, God is still there. And it is not for us to deny that. It is for us to accept that and honor that by really allowing ourselves to go into that. I wanted to share with you the poem by Rumi. It's called The Guest House. He says, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from above." For us to truly, I believe, get ultimate reality, we have to get real with where we're at. And it is through that, through living more authentically, to allowing ourselves to be more vulnerable and authentic with the truth of our being, that we will experience the truth of God. And that way, when we sing, and I get it, like on the day that we're talking about spiritual bypassing, we're singing the song, "I Am Happy." But when we sing it, it's not just words. When we sing it, it's not glossing over where we're at. When we sing it, it is felt from a joy that comes from within, a joy that recognizes that God is always with us, a joy that comes from recognizing that all of our experiences are here to support us in recognizing more of who we are. And so let all that needs to be revealed, let all that needs to be healed, and then truly we will live with joy and with grace in all areas of our lives. We can do this because the power of God that is always present is in us and is in our lives, not only because I'm choosing to affirm it, but because I've done the work to truly believe it. And so can you. Namaste. Thank you so much for visiting our YouTube channel. We post new videos every week to keep you positive, present, and inspired to your divinity. Please click on the subscribe button below and also that notification bell. Remember to share this with your friends and your family, those that you know will be inspired just like you have been. And always remember that we love you, that we bless you, that we behold the Christ in you, and we see you doing great things. Thanks and take care.